anytime you make a profit, you got to give back, and God returns things tenfold. So if you give, you get. And whether you get that financially or you get that as a reward in your heart or your mind, it doesn't matter. You get it.
Welcome to the Build to Billions podcast, where we help purpose-driven entrepreneurs become better stewards with their capital. We're on a journey to help you scale from millions to billions, so you can give more all of it away. My name is Brett Swartz, and I'm excited to bring on an amazing guest today. He's got an incredible background. He's an incredible story. He is a client of Capital Gains Tax Solutions, and we're here to talk about his journey from exiting highly appreciated self-storage facility to the deferred sales trust to access some freedom, some flexibility, and so much more. Please welcome to the show with me, Jim Orr. Jim, how are we doing?
I'm good, Brett. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And for our listeners getting to know you for the first time, tell us a little bit more about your story and your current focus.
My wife and I, along with our partners, built a self-storage facility starting in 2011 when we acquired the property right before I retired from the military. And built
Thank you for your service, by the way. What branches you serve and for how long?
I was Army for a little over 30 years. Retired as a colonel.
What's the top thing you learned from being in the Army for 30 years?
I can tell you what I miss the most about it, and that's the troops.
Yeah.
When you get to the level that I was at, it becomes a little more political, and that's not necessarily the fun part, but the leadership and dealing with the troops was the best part.
Mm-hmm. And how do you still remember the first time you went into boot camp and the first? Is that like ingrained in you that initial intensity?
Yeah, it's a story that I don't want to talk about. Though.
Because
it was a rude awakening when I showed up at Fort Knox. I can tell you that.
Especially 30 years ago, I imagine it was probably.
It was almost 40 now.
Okay. Well, you're still looking great if it was 40 years ago. But it was. You think, how much did it change over the years for the intensity of that kind of boot camp, like that kind of thing? Do you feel like it stayed pretty consistent?
No, it definitely didn't stay consistent. I had the honor to run a military academy where we put kids through pre-basic training later on in my career. And that was because they had to get ingrained to what to expect when they got there, because they just weren't ready for the military indoctrination they were about to get. So we tried to get their head in the game before they showed up there.
And where did you grow up? Where was it always Pennsylvania? Or?
Yeah, I grew up in Pennsylvania, in the town that I live in now.
Yeah.
And I just moved to the other hill.
Yeah.
So
okay.
A little closer to where we built the storage
and
facility.
then you became a colonel at a certain point, right? In your career. And so and what was that shift from being maybe more of the troops and to the colonel and more of the higher leadership?
Well, you have the opportunity to work directly with the troops for about the first 20 years, and then you become a staff or command guy at the upper echelons where you're a little more removed from dealing with troops. You still have troops, you just don't have near as many of them. So.
One thought I have is common sense practices, right? So what was like, hey, my 30 years in the military, this was the 1 and 2 top common sense. Like, it could be discipline, it could be teamwork, it could be like what would you say kind of sticks out for you if you would have?
It's all about the people.
Okay.
If you have a good relationship with your unit and the people in your unit makes you look good.
Yep.
If you don't, you are struggling.
If there's one thing I've seen, knowing you now for about a year and a half, 2 years, or so more, is you have an amazing way of building relationships with people, right? Was that always a natural gift that Jim Orr was a person who could just build relationships anywhere, talk with anybody growing up? Was it pretty natural, or what do you feel like?
For me, it was pretty natural from the perspective of I spent a lot of time with my grandfather growing up. And he said, as long as you look in the mirror and you like what you see, so will everybody else.
Okay.
So I kind of just lived it that way when I was in the Army.
So it seemed like Grandpa was a big part of the influence growing up?
Yes, for sure.
Out of Pennsylvania too, same hometown? Or?
Yep.
Okay. Did he serve in the military or anything?
No.
Okay.
No, he when he grew up, he was at that military age in between World War I and World War II, so he didn't have to serve.
Okay. How about any other family members, brothers, sisters, anyone else in the military, or were you kind of the first to forge that for the family?
My dad was in the military for a short period in the 60s, And then outside of that, nobody else.
Okay, excellent. And then fast forward, married now how many years? Kids?
We just celebrated our 35th anniversary. We had 6 kids. My oldest son, Max, passed away in 2021 and from a adverse reaction to the COVID vaccine. I don't want to go into details about that. It's pretty hard to pill to swallow, but as a result of some of the medical issues that he had and the reason that we gave him the vaccine, my oldest daughter is now a surgeon.
Wow.
So then we have another daughter who was just younger than Max, a daughter in college, a son who is a junior, and another son who's in 9th grade in high school.
We're at the DLP conference, shooting this, live in person, which is always great. And we just heard of today, taking pain and using that to go to impact. It sounds like your daughter has done that, taken some of that pain that's happened and move it to impact to make a difference.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about that. How have you instilled that in your children, who I've met and are all wonderful over the years? Like it may not just be the pain part, but just perspective and life and gratitude.
I think growing up with a special needs brother, whom we had nursing care in the house because of how bad Max was from a medical perspective, which was the reason we got him the vaccine. It provided a lot of humility for those kids. It also provided a lot of empathy for them. And in Kayla's case, it was a phenomenal drive. And she was old enough to remember when he had his medical incident. So the other ones, most of them weren't even around at that point. So
wow. And so Kayla's doing great there. Talk about the boys and the rest of the
Cassidy. She is on her honeymoon right now in Aruba.
Yeah.
They got married in June, but had a delayed honeymoon, so she's there. She lives in Winchester, works for an oral surgeon as doing the anesthesia and surgical tech for an oral surgeon, and is married to a pretty good guy by the name of Aaron. I could go into some stories about him, but we'll just leave that for another time. And then Maggie is at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, studying business. John is a junior, just barely missed going to States for golf after last year putting a hole in a window. He got a hole in one this year, so he's improved his golf game. And Brian just started basketball. He's the 9th grader.
I love that. So I have a question for you. I had 4 daughters, as you know, right? So in
at a strive,
and a strive, and a baby, I call him a baby boy. He's 6 years old now. My oldest is now 14 for their daughters. But that transition when the boys start coming around, or then it starts to get engagement and then married. So any advice for the dads listening out there with the daughters that aren't quite in that dating age and that engagement and that kind of thing? It seems kind of intense. So what have you learned through the process of 2 daughters so far? Being married now.
Well, one married, the other one ready, steady boyfriend. But
got it.
She's in her medical residency, so she's not ready to make that commitment at that point.
Yes. Okay.
I think the most important thing to think about, especially with daughters as they become teenagers, is you're not going to be with them all the time. So you have to instill in them that they have to make good decisions even when you're not there, because the decisions they make have a pretty good likelihood of affecting the rest of their life if it's not a good decision.
So it sounds like you're really empowering them to know that there's consequences for poor decisions, and there's great outcomes for positive decisions, and saying that you understand that you're going to own that. Is that a good way to say it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Just like anything else in life.
Yeah. And kind of like when you went and you start buying the self-storage, you start building it, like go through that journey of like, hey, I'm going to get into real estate and I want to build some wealth here. What was that like?
Well, it really started when I was still in the Army. I was pursuing my MBA and I was taking a class called entrepreneurship and decided to focus that way. We were moving and had to put our stuff in storage because we sold our house a lot quicker than the house was built. And we didn't have a great storage experience. So I decided that I would do my thesis on storage. And I wrote a business plan on storage. And then fast forward 10 years as I'm getting ready to retire from the Army, and my much better half decided that in my afterlife from the Army, we were going to build a storage facility. And I kind of just went along and said, yes, dear. And
That's part of why you married for, you said 30 years?
35 years.
35 years. So
yep.
It seems to be a good,
Oh, it's a great team.
Just let her be the boss and you build it and everything goes well, right?
And say, yes, dear.
Yeah. And what else?
If any married guy wants a hint, that's the best solution. And so we bought the property. I spent off weekends traveling around the country, attending self-storage conferences, building a network of smart people who had been in the industry, who could give me counsel, help me design a facility basically from the ground up, and then went to the bank that I worked with in between Army stints and said, I need a loan. The board of directors said no. But the president of the bank remembered me and knew my brother-in-law, who was our partner.
Back to relationships, right? The relationships pay off.
And he said, I want to talk to him. So we went in and talked to the president of the bank. And he said, when we were done, he said, you guys have done your homework. This is going to be successful. And we're going to do the loan on my signature. So
beautiful.
But he was a great community banker. He understood the importance of the community, and he worked with community members in order to do that, much like DLP is doing with their DLP bank.
100%. We love DLP, by the way. If you haven't checked them out, make sure you check out DLP Capital. They're incredible. We're going to share how this all comes together with DLP here a little bit later in the show. So you build it. It goes well. You do the business plan. Fast forward. You're making the money. It's going well, but then you're thinking about maybe selling, right? Like walk us through that kind of that transition there.
Well, we built that facility out and didn't really finish it until 21 or 22. I think 21. But in the meantime, we had bought another facility that was pretty run down and it was in the process of rehabbing it. We decided to look into what is this going to bring, because all corporate America is trying to buy storage facilities all over the world. And thankfully, they're willing to recognize the NOI and pay you based on the NOI as opposed to other people that don't really understand the industry. So we explored that option, found a buyer. They wanted to buy both of them. I said, no, the other one's not ready because I didn't have the revenue where I wanted it. And we turned over a storage facility of 434 units, 100% full, zero delinquency.
That's phenomenal to get that so efficient and running, and you're able to sell at a good price. But then you start looking at capital gains taxes, and you're in the state of Pennsylvania, and you get the federal government, and you've got some depreciation recapture. So walk us through the moment where you're like, wow, like this is maybe more painful than I thought it might be.
When I recognized how much money we were going to have to pay in capital gains tax, I started to look into what were different means to avoid capital gains tax. And over the course of several days and researching things on the internet and looking at YouTube, I learned a lot about the details and the nitnoid of being involved in a 1031 and how that doesn't necessarily work as well as you'd like it, because that timeline thing kind of bites you and you have to sell it or you have to buy in a certain amount of time or you end up paying the capital gains anyway. And this guy I found on YouTube named Brett Schwartz talked about capital gains tax solutions and the concept of the deferred sales trust. And I listened to it. My wife and I both have accounting degrees, so we kind of understood a lot of the principles behind that. And I was like, I think I ought to call this guy. And I called and left a message, and about 12 seconds later, my phone rang because you called me right back. And we spoke, and I understood it. And then we got on with Todd, the inventor of the DST. And as he went into the details and the actual tax laws and how he used them to develop the DST, it made perfect sense to me. And then I just had to bring the accountant.
So slow down a little bit because this is good. They said I'm gonna pull some stuff out of here, right?
I'm gonna turn this up here a little bit.
Yeah, that's no problem.
I don't know if we just have a weak
Yeah, there you go.
screw
Weak
on
arm.
it or what.
Yeah. So, yeah, and we'll go that all here in a minute and get more so, but I'm going to pull some stuff out. So I'm kind of curious, so the property management and you're managing the property, right? You're active in this. Were you looking to free up your time and your energy if you could keep the cash flow? Like what was the primary like purpose for selling if you had to peg it?
Well, there was a couple things. One, I had caught wind that there was a fella that bought a piece of property right in the heart of the residential community, was looking to build a storage facility.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to have to go through a couple years of getting that developed and everything, but I knew it was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Two, somebody had just bought the Sears building in the mall, and they were a storage group.
Mm.
That was literally a quarter mile away from our facility. And three, I didn't have a lot of faith in the Biden economy and where things were and whether or not people were going to be able to afford things after COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was the right time. When you're sitting at 100% full and 100% paid, no delinquency, you have a Class A facility that somebody is going to be willing to pay for.
I think you're spot on. So more supply coming, and then the uncertainty of where the economy is going, and then so you sell at a good solid price, and then you're looking at this capital gains tax. So you're looking for ways to defer it, and I think a lot of times the clients don't want to do a 1031 exchange too, is because you're buying in the same market. Right. And you're kind of doubling down.
Well, you don't have to buy in the same market, but you may end up overpaying for something because you have to get something.
Right.
Otherwise, you have to pay the capital gains.
Right.
So it's worthwhile to pay a little bit extra just so you don't lose that money to taxes.
Right. Exactly. So, okay. So now fast forward, you're thinking about the deferred sales trust. You're liking what you're hearing. And you're like, okay, I mean, one of the biggest concerns is, seems too good to be true. My CPA would know about this, or would have known about it. Shouldn't they all know about it, right? And for some people, right? But you have your accounting background, you have your business background, and so talk about that legal part. Even though you talked to me, you talked to Todd, the tax attorney, you're feeling good.
Oh, I understood it wholeheartedly.
Right.
But then I talked to my attorney, who originally was kind of like, Jim, I never heard of that. I don't really understand it. I said, well, we'll schedule a call with Todd and he can talk you through it.
Yeah.
Todd's a CPA and a tax attorney, so he understands all the law. That's why he developed it.
Right.
And then called the accountant, and she's like, well, I just think you should pay the capital gains tax.
How did that feel when she said that?
It felt like I needed a new attorney or accountant. But they were both willing to get on. They got on the call with Todd. He talked them through it. They both asked some questions. You were on. And in the end, they both told me, no, sounds good.
Right. Yeah. So you set up the call. You encourage them to get on the call. You get them on the call. And
then I paid him for being on the call.
Yeah, you paid him to be on the call. Right. Yeah. And then they give the hey, sounds good.
Yep.
Green light. No red lights anymore. And you move forward. We found that is the consistent theme, right? Because if the CPA had already known about it, they've already presented it to you, or had they had another solution, you wouldn't be there looking for something else.
Right.
But at the same time, if you don't encourage them to get on that call, you can't. It's unreasonable to expect that they're going to be positive about something they don't know about or haven't done yet. And so that's been my experience, right? So if you
but I will tell you, just because of my background and being on the call with Todd, it almost didn't matter what they said. I was going to do it anyway.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Because Todd provides that.
That's a good point.
Background.
Yep.
The lifetime audit defense.
Lifetime audit
on
defense.
It that you can't ask for anything else.
And if people are listening to this too, what we found is your CPA your tax persons, if they haven't done it, a lot of times they think they have to defend it. Todd and his team defend it lifetime. Now they work with your CPA who's filing your personal tax return. But the neat part is he's never had a single change in any of the tax audits.
At the time, there were 25 audits.
Yep.
I remember Todd saying there's been 25 audits.
Yep.
Zero findings.
Yeah, 0 changes and 0 findings, right?
So you can't argue with that.
And it wasn't just out of 30 or 40 deals. It's thousands of transactions. Okay?
Right.
Close to over At the time, probably about 25 years, 26 years. Now we're like 27, 28 years here.
Yeah.
And so it's been also a lot of the audits have been in California. One was in New Jersey, right? And so multiple states, federal audits, state audits, no change, no fines. Okay, so you get comfortable with the legal part. You got a little extra bonus that your attorney and CPA are feeling good about it as well. So then move to trust and control, right? Because now this is a big piece. Control is often a big question with the deferred sales trust. Working with myself and my team, Capital Gains Tax, which is a trustee. What concerns did you have initially about working with a trustee, and how much control the trustee would have?
I had not only found Brett, but I had also found a couple other guys that were doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I had calls into them. The one fella called me back. He had been dealing with an issue at his house, so it was a couple days. And he said, "If you're working with Brett Schwartz, you don't need to work with me." So, and I don't think I ever told you that.
I don't think you have.
No, but he was one of the guys that was through Bob,
Mm-hmm.
and but he knew you,
Uh-huh.
and he said, "You don't have to go through me.
Yeah,
You're fine if you already started working with him."
Yeah, well, that's honorable. That's great. And so but how about just when working with me? Was there anything, or even not necessarily me, because we know each other now, but at the time, I'm trying to take you back.
Yeah.
Was there anything about like
when we started out and we went through the process and
Yeah.
we went into the 1031, because you
Mhm.
still have to go through that 1031 and have it sit there for 45 days.
for your particular transaction, by the way?
And not, for real estate transaction.
Well, let's clarify for people real fast. So if you have what's called a debt over basis, and or if you want to go for a 1031, we do have the best 1031 exit plan. But if you don't have that fact pattern, you can actually close at the close of escrow. And so there's a couple windows there. Just kind of depends. But yeah, for your particular one.
In Pennsylvania, because if we would have done it the other way, we were going to have to pay transfer tax twice.
Okay, that's a good point. So this is something I think Todd found, and this is why it's so important. Todd found that.
Actually, Tim found that. My attorney found that.
Okay, so Tim found that.
Yeah.
So that's also the importance of getting multiple minds and
Right.
heads around to look at it and paying the professionals to look at it.
Mhm.
You're right. So we'd have to pay it twice. So instead, we did a pit stop at the 1031 exchange accommodator, and then on day 45, we were able to move into the deferred sales
Right.
trust.
And after the close, remember, I came down
Mhm.
and met you directly
Yep.
because my whole thought process was, I'm trusting you with an awful lot of wealth.
I thought it was before the close. I mean, it was when the 1031 exchange accommodator.
Yeah, it was
right?
during the
Yeah.
1031.
Right.
But it was before the close of the
deferred sales
DST.
trust. Yep.
So I came down and met with you,
Yep.
and then subsequently talked to one of the investment opportunities that you gave me with DLP.
DLP has been amazing.
Yeah. And, you gave me, I think, 6 different ones to look at.
Right.
They were the ones that stuck out the most. And when I came down here, I was kind of like, okay, well, this is the right place to put my money.
Yeah, and let's talk about DLP, right? So we sit down with Larry and Don, and we sit at the big table, and we're going in there. What most impressed you about that meeting with Don and Larry?
Well, I first of all, the meeting was with me and you and Larry.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't with Dawn.
Right.
And Dawn walks in about 15 minutes into it, sits down and spends 35 minutes. And
Mm-hmm.
this is a CEO of $1 billion company
Mm-hmm.
coming in and spending 35 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about the company for probably 5 to 10 minutes. And the rest of the time was just getting to know each other.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Down to earth and authentic and living their values, right? And
Yeah.
also very, very intentional about meeting with new potential investors, right?
Sure. Yep.
And what has been the experience so far with DLP since what you thought it might be and what it is now?
It's everything I thought it might be and then some.
Mm-hmm.
The values, the beliefs, and the execution of the company is beyond what I had hoped. And when I say that, I mean not just in return on investment, but return on impact.
Mm-hmm.
What they do for every stakeholder, whether that's somebody renting from them, somebody buying from them, somebody borrowing from them, somebody investing in them, and for myriad philanthropic donations globally. It's good to see your money work towards that.
It's remarkable, right? When you know that what you're doing can have what Don would say success and significance, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could have return on investment and return on impact, and it can be the both. It doesn't have to be the one or the other. and you can, and the values align, right, and the mission aligns, and it feels, and it is a community that's pushing that forward to help a lot of people, and the affordable housing crisis that's going on, and
Sure.
doing it at such a high level of excellence. And so those are some of the things that I have found as well. Okay, so shifting to the trust a little bit too here. So curious, what has your experience been working with me now as your trustee? So from when you went in to where it's at now, tell me about that.
So when we started, you and I had talked about investment strategy and stuff like that, and the other piece of that is the whole joint venture opportunity where we could invest in something that brought the return enough to pay Brett's fees as well as make my interest payment back to me for the money that the trust borrowed from us. And we borrowed that through our LLC, or we loaned it through our LLC.
Joint venture into LLC, and then you went into the LP lending fund, which is a loan mechanism
Right.
for that. But
Right. No. I'm talking about the fact that we didn't actually individually take a DST. Our company has the DST.
Owes it to the company. Yeah.
Promissory note, not us individually.
Right.
And that was beneficial to both us and the partners to make that work. And then we did the joint venture. We had the trust invest in the lending fund. I was a little hesitant about the building communities fund, but we put money into that, not quite even. And about 3 months into it, I said, hey, Brett, we need to move a little more money into the joint venture. So we moved that over, and that's really worked out well. And I'm anxious about the BRD land investment as well that we'll do here in the future.
Yeah. And that's the key, right? I mean, to be able to diversify and make moves and flexibility here, right?
Sure.
And that's the cool thing about the deferred sales trust. You're not pigeonholed like the 1031 exchange into one asset, one location of typically one location, and typically one place in time. It can be flexible with the investing,
and you're not tied to that timeline where the 1031. You have to be tied to that timeline or it falls apart.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so to finish the question though, curious. So from what you went into working with myself to where it's at now, is it what you hoped and thought it would be? And how's your experience been with working with capital gains tax solutions?
Well, I think the best part about working with capital gains tax solutions is the open ear that's on the other end of the phone. There's things that I see from my accounting background that you've been willing to listen to and see the wisdom of it. And it'll benefit not just me, but it'll benefit all the clients when it takes that.
That's one of our core values, right? Every day and every way, get a little bit better, right?
Yeah.
And so to find things that we can improve on, find things that we can get better on, and with reporting and with like all the details there. So what else? What other?
I think the other thing too is like coming to this conference, there's 4 different DST clients of yours that are here.
Right.
And the opportunity to interact with them and talk about the different successes that we've all had in working with you and in using the DST. I think that's the real key, because a trustee, sorry, Brett, a trustee is a trustee. If you're using the DST, it's a win. That's the key. So
that's good feedback. Yeah. And the community is what we want to be able to do. And kind of the mastermind and like figuring out ways to make it an investment and not an expense, which leads into the next question, which is like fees, right? So, because legality, controls, trust the trustee, how we're going to work together. The last one is fees, typically, that people hold back. They're like, man, how do I make this thing an investment and not an expense? So what has been the way that you found to make it an investment, not an expense, when perhaps in the beginning you're like, whoa, is this expensive? But sometimes people have in their mind.
Well, my evaluation, and this because I'm a spreadsheet kind of guy, was I looked at, if I do this with the DST and the DST saves, and I'm just going to throw a number out because it's easy to calculate, $1 million in taxes, because you don't have to pay that until you request your promissory note money back. You have $1 million working for you. Well, if you're getting $1 million and that $1 million is returning 10% and I'm getting 9%, you're making your fees and I'm making a little bit of money off of that. I might not make all of it but if you're getting your fees for everything that we have, out of that, I haven't lost anything.
Yep. Yeah.
And there's some value to paying somebody to do something to help you be further ahead of the game.
100%. Yeah. And just to even clarify a little bit more, it's about 1.5 to 2%. So it's actually a little bit higher.
Yeah.
But the key is typically we can net 8, 9, 10% net of fees on average over this 10-year period of time, right?
Right.
And some of that's like the building community funds paying about 8% quarterly, but it's probably going to average 13, 15, maybe even 17% over the 3 to 5 years.
And as it grows, you'll get more depreciation.
Yeah, and the more depreciation that kicks in.
So that's less taxable income that comes with that.
Yeah, and that's really the key. If you're looking at the deferred sales trust and you're wondering like how to make an investment, not an expense, there's the deferral of the tax. There's also the deferral of the income tax, which I think I want to touch on right now. So Jim, you're not necessarily receiving, the LLC is not necessarily receiving all the interest back, even though it's owed the 9% on the note for yours.
Yeah, that'll just accrue.
It'll accrue, exactly. And you'll take a percentage of that. And that being in Pennsylvania, and the income tax deferral is true savings every single year because you're able to defer that.
Right.
And then the next one would be the depreciation, that you can get a new depreciation schedule for the joint venture LLC, the way that we structure it, where you can get the majority of the depreciation for these assets. And so as you peel back the onion, the DST can be an investment and not an expense. So what would you say to someone who's, wanting to move forward, but is maybe still reluctant? Like what would be something to encourage them or anything else?
Call me.
Yeah. Okay.
Brett will be happy to give you my number.
Right. And so imagine they call you and like, hey, Jim. Okay,
and they could call Nick. They could call Steve.
Yep.
Warren.
They call Warren.
Yeah. Those are the 4 of us that are at this conference.
Right.
And I've met a couple
Dave,
other ones.
They call Dave, then call Shay.
Yeah.
And so, and they call you and like, okay, Jim. So, what would you say if they called you right now? What would you say?
I would say, let me send you the spreadsheet. You fill it out and tell me what it says.
Yep.
Because the spreadsheet that I use is Army-like, keep it simple, stupid. Mm-hmm. You can fill in your own numbers that's specific to your state, and it'll tell you what it's going to do. Yeah. We sold the other facility, and it wasn't quite at the point where I was going to have enough tax savings. So we're going to pay the capital gains tax.
Right.
Take the money, reinvest it in other things. We've already put some of it in DLP right now. But as I want to build another storage facility, I just pull it out, build a storage facility. I don't have to borrow from the bank. Or if the interest rates go down, I borrow from the bank because that's making me more money than I'm paying in interest.
It just makes sense, right? So the numbers got to make sense. The controls got to make sense. The legality's got to make sense. Kind of wrapping up the deferred sales trust conversation, like, how has the deferred sales trust working with capital gains tax solutions now, DLP and investing and all, just the whole package, right? How has it, I guess, most changed your life if you look reflecting on that? Like the thing that, this is what it most did, especially now that you're perhaps able to have even a little bit more time, maybe with the family to travel or to do different things.
Yeah.
Like, what would you say?
I think the biggest impact that it's had on our life as a family is mom's around. Because my wife was the queen of customer service for our storage facilities because I was still working up until about a year before we sold it. She was running the facility, doing all the administration. I would oversee it with my brother-in-law partner in the construction aspect of it and the maintenance of it, plowing snow. But she's free. And all of us in the family have seen the freedom that's given her to be around more. When you watch a woman answer the phone for the storage facility sitting on a beach with a towel over her head so the wind isn't blowing in the phone, and then she's sitting on an iPad sending an email to get somebody signed in, and they're moved in while we're not home, but it takes her away from that family time.
Yeah, it really feels like moved from financial piece because it was producing great income and all of that to time and energy piece, right? Or stress piece, or just, not that you don't enjoy work and doing the thing, but hey, at a certain point you want to, invest that time into other things. Is that a fair summary? Yeah. All right. That's great. I'm glad I asked that question. On a scale of 1 to 10, and this is the question: how likely are you to recommend capital gains tax solutions, the DST, to friends or family?
Already have.
Yeah. Right. And you have.
Yeah.
So a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how what would you say?
As long as it meets that financial support requirement, I'd say if you don't do it, I don't know why you're not doing it.
Okay, great. That's awesome. So it's a 10. I'm taking it as a 10. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, and you know, I've met with some other people that my attorney, who's now a believer in the DST, has brought to the table and talked to them about it from my perspective. And I know you'll be getting more business. Hopefully I get a kickback from that.
You know, we pay referral fees, you know what I mean? So here's the neat part I think about this, reflecting on it, right? The journey here, and looking at the legality, the controls, making the DST an investment, not an expense, the trustee, DLP capital, all of that. Is there anything that kind of surprised you? Like, wow, like I didn't realize that, and now it's that. Anything comes to mind?
The one thing that surprised me and disgusted me, probably more than anything else, is just how corrupt the SEC is. The limitation on private equity investment is wrong. You know, every person who has money to invest should be able to invest in private equity just like they can in the stock market. But that's the SEC being controlled by the stock market, as opposed to, look, if somebody wants to risk their money to start a business, they can do it, right? Well, if you're going to be a limited partner in a private equity and get a K1, why can't you do it? You have to have $1 million net worth, not including your house, or make $300,000, and they're talking about raising it to $500,000 or to $5 million in order to invest in private equity. Who's encouraging that? The people managing 401ks.
It's more like
because if everybody could do it, they would.
Right. Yeah, that is a battle, and so far it's good that it's not higher. But for those that are fortunate to be accredited investors, that's the neat part about the trust. It can go in and out of passive real estate, private equity deals.
Right.
It can be on the stock market. It can go into Bitcoin. It can go into these different things. It can go into your own deals. So it's very flexible. If you wanted to say, hey, we want to build another self-storage facility, we want to buy an apartment complex, we want to do something active, you can still be active. So you're not limited, but you're not forced, right? You can do a little bit of both, right? And so talk about what the flexibility means for you if and when you wanted to do that.
Well, like, for example, because we're required to have so much money in a more liquid asset, and the lending fund meets that requirement. If I wanted to, once I find out that crypto regulations are coming, we're going to pull some money and we're going to pull it into certain utility crypto because it's going to skyrocket.
Right.
But until those regulations come, that utility crypto is just sitting there.
Right. But just the knowledge that you can make moves, right? I think that's key. That empowers the investor, empowers the entrepreneur, and empowers the person who's retired or semi-retired to flex with, your son or daughter. Your sons get older and they graduate and they want to start a business. Guess where the trust could do it? It could partner. You could partner with your son, you partner with your daughter to start a business or buy a piece of real estate. And so you're able to move legacy, not just financial, but also the knowledge to do the business or the investment with them, right? That's really cool. That neat piece, right? That could be in the future when
it's actually that much more money that's available for that,
right?
Because you didn't have to pay the capital gains tax.
Yeah, you have to pay it in the year of sale, or you can defer it over the time. Okay, so I think people are getting the feel for why capital gains tax solutions and the deferred sales trust can be an amazing fit. If you want to take action right now, you go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. You can also pick up the book, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. We're here with Jim Orr, person who sold a self-storage facility, had massive tax out of Pennsylvania, and was looking for some freedom, some flexibility with the capital, and has found it with the Deferred Sales Trust, Capital Gains Tax Solutions, DLP Capital as the main sources here. That being said, are you ready for the lightning round, Mr. Jim Orr?
Sure.
All right. We'll make it quick here. Common sense practices. What are some common sense practices that you believe are often overlooked in investing or business today?
Knowing the people.
What do you mean by that? Like when you say knowing the people?
Well, just like the investment in DLP, there was a lot of money that I had to invest. And for an Army guy, that was an awful lot of money. And so before I would let that fly, I came down here to not only meet DLP, but also meet you face to face. We'd talked plenty of times. And I think the coolest part of that was the breakfast.
Yeah.
with you and your family.
Right.
Because I know you were kind of like, you want to go to breakfast with my family?
Yeah, because
family's a good indicator of who you're dealing with.
Well, you had 6, I had 5, right? And so we had a chance to have an amazing breakfast, and you got to meet the kids and
in a 4-person booth,
and Melanie, my wife, in a 4-person booth, right? And it was a little bit chaos, but I mean, it's funny. Melanie and I last night we were talking about how much she enjoys talking with you and how well, and Laura, and how well we all get along. And she goes, there's something really special when parents have so many kids. Like I feel like they just get it. Like if parents have 1 or 2 kids, it's like, but when you're a 3 or 4 or 5, 6, I mean, this is a whole nother level of just, let's just say, ease of like understanding and connection. And so that's applauding to you too.
One of my favorite things to do, because it takes people by surprise, is when a mom or a dad is dealing with a couple kids and, they're struggling and they'll turn around and say, sorry about this.
Yeah.
And I just like to go, don't worry about it. I had 6.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, oh, yeah, then you're used to this.
You're used to this. Yeah. Yeah. The empathy is real and it's authentic. And we appreciate that about you and your family. Next question. How do you instill or pass on a stewardship mindset in your family? Like just that thought. What do you think come to mind on that?
Example.
Mm-hmm.
More than anything else, they have to see it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very involved in my church.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very involved with the Boy Scouts.
Mm-hmm.
Both boys are about ready to make Eagle.
Mm-hmm.
John has his project done. Brian has to start his.
Yep.
I'm trying to get him lined up so I don't have to pay for 1 Eagle Scout ceremony instead of 2. But I think just them seeing how we're involved in those volunteer organizations. My wife's the secretary for the Kiwanis Club, and we put out the flags over East Hills, which is about a 2.5-mile stretch of flags that on every holiday we line the primary drag that goes through our community with U.S. flags.
You know what it feels like, and I'm sensing it, that you have a deep care, concern, and compassion and love for people anywhere you're at, and your family exudes that as well.
Yeah,
it's just real and everyone I talk to, hey, I met Jim, and I really love talking to Jim. Even before the show, he was like, "You seem like a colonel, like in a really good way." Like Justin, the video editor, he's like, "You seem like a colonel." I'm like, "Yeah, like your leadership is it's not a heavy burden. Let's put it that way, right?
No, it's easy.
Like the yoke is easy, the burden is light, but it still moves to action, right? I think that's the unique gift that you've been given.
Well, thanks.
Do you feel like that's what it is?
I don't know if that's what it is, but I have learned a lot from a lot of really good leaders.
Yeah.
Larry Erdley comes to mind. He was my brigade commander when I took my first company command. And we were at a brigade meeting. I had never met him. He introduced me as Jimmy Orr, which is what my family called me, and knew who I was. And I was like, how the heck did he even know that? So I made a point to know every soldier I had by their first name.
He instilled. John Maxwell spoke there. He talked about instilling in somebody, right? Not just giving them. So it seems like that leader instilled in you that concept, and you caught that, and you didn't just keep it. You used it. You took action on it.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, that might be it right there. Let me a couple of questions, and we'll be out of here. How do you balance the pursuit of profit with the principles of generosity and giving back?
Anytime you make a profit, you got to give back. And God returns things tenfold. So if you give, you get. And whether you get that financially or you get that as a reward in your heart or your mind, it doesn't matter. You get it.
Beautiful. I love that. I think this is one of the last questions here. As you look to the future, what principles do you see as essential for the next generation of leaders to embrace in order to achieve sustained success and impact?
I would caveat that with they don't have to be leaders. I think we, as a society, need to spend more time instilling in the youth the principles of volunteerism. and doing things for the right reason. And not everybody does that.
Jim Orr, I want to thank you for being on the show. I want to thank you for being a friend. I feel like a mentor now, and I do appreciate your care and concern for me, my company, our clients. Like,